Good evening, everyone. My name's Linda Sperry, and I'm president of the board of the Alliance for Substance Abuse Prevention. And I'm joined tonight by some of our board members who are out there checking you in. And we're glad that you took time from your busy schedules. We know you've got kids at home, you've been working all day, and you just want to relax. But we promise that tonight will be worth your time. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to John Buckey, our principal at Nantucket High School. Thank you, John.
Good evening and welcome. Thank you for attending this evening. We're happy to have you here and hope that you will find this presentation informative. This is the third year we have provided this opportunity for our students and their families. Our intention for this program is to be a conversation that will hopefully begin other conversations. Dateline ran an interesting program Sunday night. Parents watched their children presented with the opportunity to get into a vehicle with someone who said he had been drinking or smoking marijuana. To the person, each parent believed their child would make the right decision and not get in the vehicle with the impaired driver. Almost to the young person, every adolescent hopped in the SUV with little hesitation. Only one young lady whose uncle had been killed in a drunk driving accident refused to go with the young man who said he had been drinking. And this is why we do this program annually. The conversation cannot stop. While we have some encouraging news from the most recent Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which I will share in a moment, we need to continue to talk openly and honestly with our students and with one another. The Dateline program ended with the host and Brian Williams discussing what could be done to better communicate the message to our young people. The answer was simple: modeling. We must do more than talk about the right thing, we must model it. Ted Sizer and his wife Nancy wrote a book about 10 years ago called The Children Are Watching: Schools and the Moral Contract. Our young people do watch us. Is our message consistent with our actions? Tonight's presentation is a tangible and visible confirmation of message and action. I am glad that you are here. Be a Parent, Not a Pal was never intended to be a referendum on anyone's parenting. Regularly, as we look at the tragic events as they unfold on the nightly news, we ask ourselves, how or why did that happen, or what could have been done to prevent it? For many years, we have conducted the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. We have years' worth of data to confirm that underage drinking, access to alcohol, and driving under the influence are areas of concern for our Nantucket community. We cannot wait for an unfortunate incident to happen before addressing these issues here. Prom and ball are school-sponsored events. We offer these as privileges, not as rights. As such, they are not required. There are also times when adding alcohol to a celebration becomes a vulnerability. Schools across the Commonwealth and the nation have implemented a number of initiatives to address such a vulnerability. Some require students to submit to a breathalyzer test as a condition of admission to a prom or a ball. The hope is that whatever action is taken will underscore the dangers of underage drinking. Again, we hope that this evening begins a conversation with your students, with our school, and in our community. We recognize that one night and one forum will not change the world, but it may begin how we collectively work together to address this issue in our community. Before we begin this evening's presentation, I would like to provide you a brief overview of the 2012 Youth Risk Behavior Survey. We have been working with the Alliance for Substance Abuse and Prevention for many years to complete the annual Youth Risk Behavior Survey. We began doing this in 2006. After 4 years of doing the survey, we decided to go with an every other year format, focusing our efforts on programming in the alternative years. We did not do the survey in 2010. As Murphy's Law would have it, in 2011, there was an issue with numbering on the survey, so we needed to invalidate all of the surveys last year. So this year, 2012, we completed the Youth Risk Behavior Survey and will begin in every other year format. The comparative information tonight will reflect our most recent administration, which was 2009. We will also include data from prior surveys in '08 and '07. The Youth Risk Behavior Survey was administered here on February 3rd, 2012 to 273 of our 389 students. You may be wondering what happened to the other 116. I'll tell you. 20 students were absent that day. 17 were on a field trip. 3 of them, their parents opted them out from participating. And here's the kicker, 39 were kicked out for validity reasons. Often when we report the results of the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, if there's information that people disagree with, one of the first things they say is, well, the students lied. They don't take the survey seriously. There are mechanisms built into the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that if students are not approaching it seriously, will invalidate it. So 39 of our students who took the survey, their survey was invalidated for those reasons. I won't tell you how we figured that information out. And then 37 students were unaccounted for. I contacted our partners on the Cape and I said, what does that mean when you say 37 students were unaccounted for? They were surveys that were partially completed, so they were not included in the 273 result. The presentation tonight will cover briefly substance abuse, mental health and suicide, school attachment, and bullying and violence. One of the first questions that the students are asked about substance use is if they have used alcohol, if they have used marijuana, or they have smoked cigarettes, what was the age of first use? Age of first use numbers are a mixed bag for the 2012 survey. For alcohol, we have seen improvement. In 2009, age of first use was 13.42 years, and this year, age of first use was 13.66 years of age. Unfortunately, age of first use for marijuana went from 13.94 in '09 to 13.70 this year. The same negative trend for cigarettes was reported from 13.63 in '09 to 13.48 in 2012. Despite these numbers, there are more positive trends across the board for students' 30-day use reporting and lifetime use for these substances. We continue to make progress in lifetime substance use, which seems an odd sentence. For alcohol, it was 88% in 2007, 72% in 2009, and now we are at an all-time low of 62% for 2012. So a downward trend on lifetime use of alcohol is seen from 2007. For marijuana, it was 51% in 2007, 51% in 2009, and now is at 45% for 2012. Again, looking at that number compared to the Commonwealth average in the United States, we are still above both of those averages. The same trend for cigarette smoking with 36% in 2009 and 32.5% in 2012. We have not seen any improvement in prescription drug use. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in a moment. It was 18% in 2009 and remains there in 2012. Typical month substance use among Nantucket High School versus Massachusetts and the United States. Over the years of doing this survey, the results for alcohol use in a typical month have always been in the 50% range for our students. We went from a high of 58% in 2008 to a low of 51% reported in 2006. The 38% rate reported for 2012 is another indication that we are headed in the right direction. We should be very proud of this 14% decrease. It's been in the 50s. We're now at 38%, which is lower than the 44% state average and 42% national average. We also see the downward trend in marijuana use. Not since 2006 has it been 30%. This represents a 3% decrease here on Nantucket. Although our local rate continues to be higher than the state and national averages, there is more work to be done in terms of marijuana use. Cigarette smoking has been in steady decline from a high of 20% in 2006 to our all-time low of 12% in 2012. Unfortunately, prescription drug use increased by 1% over 2009. Even this small increase represents a scary trend. In working with the State Principals Association and attending school resource officer conferences, there's a scary trend among high school students of taking prescription drugs, putting them in a bowl, and going to a party and just taking them to see what you get. Prescription drug use is an area that I think we need to spend some serious time attending to, because you know what the effect of alcohol is going to be on a system. You know what the effect of marijuana will be on a system. You don't know if somebody's gone to the mom or the aunt or the uncle's medicine cabinet and grabbed a pill bottle, go to a party and dump it in a bowl to take out to see what kind of effect you could get. So that 1% increase for me is a concern. The next several slides are going to talk about access to substances. The table indicates where Nantucket high school students reported usually obtaining alcohol within the past 30 days. Students were allowed to choose more than one response. The primary source of alcohol for our population was through social sources, friends and relatives. There were questions on the survey, times when parents permit students to drink. Students were asked if there were any times their parents permitted them to drink alcohol. They were also given options as to when this would have occurred. Students were also allowed to select more than one answer. And you can see the rate of return, the number of students, and the reasons that they list. Reasons why students choose not to drink alcohol or use marijuana. These are some interesting numbers. Students were asked to identify from a select list of reasons, which you see behind me, why they choose not to drink alcohol. They were allowed to select multiple reasons. Notice that the least common answer was, I think most students at my school don't use drugs. This takes us back to a perception gap that continues to exist among our students, which I'll talk about in the next slide on perceptions of drug use. This is asking students in the past 30 days. Most, 62% of Nantucket high school students reported that they had not drunk alcohol within the past 30 days. However, 95% of Nantucket high school students incorrectly believed that most Nantucket high school students drank alcohol in the past 30 days. So 62% said they did not. That takes us back to that 38% number that we were celebrating just a moment ago. But when they're asked about their friends, what do you think your friends are doing? 95% of our students think they are out drinking within the last 30 days. The same information for marijuana use. Most students, 70%, reported that they had not used marijuana in the past 30 days. However, 87% believe that students, their friends, had used marijuana in the last 30 days. Perception of prescription medicine abuse. Most students, again, 91%, are not using prescription drugs incorrectly, but 62% believe that their friends are. Perception of risk of harm. Perception of risk of harm questions ask students how much they believe people risk harming themselves by engaging in the following risk behaviors. Drinking 1 or 2 drinks of alcohol, of an alcoholic beverage. Well, I don't want that to happen. Drinking 1 or 2 drinks of an alcoholic beverage nearly every day. Smoking 1 or more packs of cigarettes per day. Smoking marijuana regularly, or using prescription medications without a doctor's order. It's interesting that most students, 88%, see the danger of prescription drugs. Perceived parental disapproval, which I think you will find encouraging. This slide is interesting as it reflects students' perception of parental disapproval. It is good that 94% of our students believe that their parents would disapprove of using prescription drugs and 90% of smoking cigarettes. The perception of disapproval for alcohol use and marijuana, however, is much lower. The question as it pertained to alcohol framed it as drink regularly. Mental health and suicide, you can see the numbers for felt sad, considered suicide, planned suicide, or attempted. We have used a good deal of programming over the last 3 years in terms of the Signs of Suicide program, and even though you have 28% of students reporting having felt sad, that represents an improvement over prior year surveys. They break the information out by grade. Again, 34 of the 272 students who reported on the or who completed the survey said that they had considered attempting suicide. That number is broken down by grade level. School attachment. School attachment relates to how students feel at Nantucket High School. The question asks students to respond in one of 3 ways: agree, neutral, or disagree to the statement, "I feel valued as a person at this school." Feel valued relates to the statement, "I feel valued as a person at this school." In 2009, 49% agree, 39% were neutral, and 12% disagree. As you can see, the numbers for this past year, 46, 39, and 14. The other question about school attachment asks students to respond in the same 3 ways about how they feel our faculty care. The statement was, "I feel faculty and staff care about me as a student." This was an area of improvement over the 2009 Youth Risk Behavior Survey results. Bullying and violence. 37% of Massachusetts middle school students reported being bullied at school within the past year. While our youth risk behavior data is not a complete comparison to that number, we can feel pretty good about the information on this slide. Having 3 guidance counselors, a school social worker, a school psychologist, a behavior specialist, and an advisor for each student, we are able to address issues before they become problems. The information about school attachment on the previous slide is also an indicator of the proactive work we do to make Nantucket High School a safe place for all students. Everyone's favorite slide. Closing remarks. We are fortunate to have many community partners that support the work that we do at Nantucket High School. The Nantucket Police Department provides us a full-time school resource officer who works with classes and students across the district. Nantucket AIDS Network sponsors the Peers Promoting Action and Awareness Club, along with the Safe Place and Family Planning that provides peer outreach and education on many of the issues reported on the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. The Nantucket Suicide Prevention Coalition supports our Signs of Suicide programming. The Alliance for Substance Abuse Prevention supports our work via social norms campaigning, Red Ribbon Week, and a host of other important educational initiatives. We will continue to participate in the Youth Risk Behavior Survey on a biannual basis. Our programming will be focused on the results. I hope this information has been enlightening. We look forward to addressing some of the areas for concern and in continuing to make gains where we have been seeing results. I'd like to introduce this evening's speaker. Brandon Arbor's practice encompasses a wide range of civil litigation matters. He represents clients in various types of commercial and employment disputes, including claims of breach of contract, breach of fiduciary duty, discrimination, and wage and hour violations. Additionally, Brandon represents heavy equipment and auto manufacturers in products liability lawsuits. He also handles personal injury and insurance coverage cases. Recently, Brandon spent 7 weeks teaching middle school students about constitutional law as a volunteer for Boston's Discovering Justice program. The program culminated in an event at the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court, during which each student participant stood up and gave an oral argument. While attending law school, Brandon gained experience working at the Boston College Legal Assistance Bureau and as a legal intern in the Federal Aviation Administration's legal offices. He also worked as a summer associate at another national law firm. From Campbell Trial Lawyers, please welcome Brandon Arbor.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm here to talk a little bit about social host liability. So what is social host liability? When I say social host liability, I just mean the risks that you subject yourself to when you host a party and serve alcohol. Our firm focuses mostly in other areas, but we have handled a couple of high-profile cases dealing with social host liability. So we have done this program before, two years in the past at this school and other schools around the Commonwealth. We found that people are unaware of the law and the dangers in this area, so I'll just go through some cases to try to illustrate the law and some dangers arising from underage drinking and social host liability. The first case involves a young woman named Taylor Meyer. In 2008, Taylor Meyer was a 17-year-old senior at King Philip Regional High School. In November of that year, she went to a Friday night football game and drank alcohol at a couple house parties afterwards. Now, after those house parties, her and about 20 to 25 of her closest friends went to the abandoned Norfolk Airport. And at some point during the night, Taylor began to stumble away from her friends while on her cell phone asking for a ride. One witness said that when Taylor asked her friends how to get back to the road to get picked up, they laughed and pointed in the opposite direction towards the swamp. Okay? Now, Taylor was supposed to have spent the night at a friend's house, so her mother did not begin looking for her until Saturday morning. It was a Friday night game. She went to bed Saturday night, put her other kids to bed, not having found Taylor. Taylor's body was finally found on Monday morning by a law enforcement search that included a SWAT team, dogs, boats, and a helicopter. Taylor had drowned in 3 feet of water. So I'll show a video of Taylor's friends speaking about the incident.
Taylor Meyer of Plainville was found dead yesterday near Norfolk. Last night, hundreds gathered at her high school in Rentham to remember the girl.
It was really surreal because you never think it could happen to somebody at your own school.
Around noon Monday, the students got word the body of the 17-year-old Plainville girl was found in a marshy and wooded area at Norfolk Airport. She and her friends were there Friday night for an underage drinking party when she wandered off, telling friends her cousin was on the way to pick her up.
It's really sad. Like, I still can't believe it. It's just like, I don't know, it's crazy.
These students say they've learned a lesson in her death. One decision can change things in the blink of an eye.
Kids our age think we're invincible, but really not. People would think this could never happen to them. We probably all thought this would never happen in such like small towns, but it can, and it can happen to anyone, not just Taylor.
Now notice all her friends mentioned that they felt they had learned their lesson, that they realized they weren't invincible anymore. We'll return to that theme later. Next is another sad case. This is a picture of Brendan Niram. At age 19, he was a Syracuse freshman. In 2003, he spent winter break at his parents' house in Newburyport, Massachusetts. His parents went out for the evening, so he and 3 friends drove up to New Hampshire, got a case of beer, and brought it back to his parents' house. There they drank and played drinking games until Brendan's mother called to say that she was returning home. Now, as the group prepared to leave, Brendan noticed that his friend, Billy White, was intoxicated. Now, Brendan asked Billy not to drive. Billy got in the driver's seat anyway. He later hit and killed 16-year-old Trista Zinnick and maimed 17-year-old Neil Bornstein. Brendan Niram was charged under the social host statute, which is General Law, Chapter 138, Section 34. He pled guilty and was sentenced to a year in the state's House of Correction, received 4 years of probation and community service. When entering his guilty plea, Niram admitted responsibility for the tragedy. He apologized to the Zinnicks and the Bornsteins. Nevertheless, he did receive jail time. And again, he was charged under the social host law, which makes it a crime to furnish alcohol to anyone under the age of 21. In this case, Brendan had purchased the beer and then gave it to his friends. But the statute is worded very broadly, so it criminalizes supply, give, provide, or allow. So Brendan could have been charged simply for allowing his friends to drink on the property under his control. Brendan was expecting leniency for the court, and after he was sentenced, he hired a new lawyer and filed an appeal. His lawyers claimed that the social host statute was meant to apply to adults supplying alcohol to minors, not to minors supplying alcohol to their friends. The Court of Appeals disagreed, rejected that argument, and held that whoever means whoever under the statute. Massachusetts is not the only state to enact a social host law. There are 33 other states that have done so. And another statute to be aware of in this context is the manslaughter statute. It's essentially one step down from murder. It's defined as the unlawful killing of another without malice. So it carries stiff penalties, and you can be found guilty through reckless conduct as opposed to intentional conduct. And this is a photo of a 15-year-old sophomore member of the volleyball team at East Hampton High School in Massachusetts, Alexis Garcia. On Friday, February 2nd, 2007, she left school at 2 p.m. and went to a friend's house. Her friend's father had bought his daughter a 1.75-liter bottle of vodka for her birthday 2 weeks earlier. The two decided to drink the entire thing that night. Later in the evening, Alexis went upstairs to take a shower. Her friend later found her face down in the bathtub, full of water. Efforts to revive her failed, and her blood alcohol was 3 times the legal limit. Now, her friend's father, Timothy Parent, pled guilty to manslaughter simply for providing the alcohol that they drank. This was the first time in Massachusetts somebody was charged with manslaughter for providing alcohol. So what is the takeaway here? 21 is 21. There are no ifs, ands, or buts under the law, and there's no gray area. We see a lot of 19 and 20-year-olds getting into trouble, especially when they're home from college. Boston Herald's commentary, what don't some people understand? Other common scenarios are prom, graduation parties. The rationale is that drinking is part of the high school experience. The assumption is everyone has fun and nothing goes wrong. The reality is that kids drink to get drunk, right? So kids drink to get drunk. Here's an example of this concept. These are pictures of Victoria Hickman, an 18-year-old freshman at York College of Pennsylvania. In 2006, she died of a massive alcohol overdose. Her friends said that they assumed she knew her limit and that she had gotten to college late that night and tried to drink quickly to catch up to her friend's level of intoxication. Friends said that she drank an insane amount of alcohol for a young girl. Her blood alcohol level was a 0.33. So her MySpace page, her tagline was "Beer saved my life." Her parents posted a different message, and they posted a memorial to her. Another statute to be aware of, both for underage kids and adults as well, the drunk driving statute. Basically, if you drive drunk and cause serious bodily injury, you can go to jail on the first offense. So the question becomes, what constitutes serious bodily injury? And Massachusetts courts have found that a mere broken finger is enough, in that a broken finger constitutes severe bodily injury. This is a picture of 127 Lincoln Road in Wayland, Mass. It's the home of Stanley Rosenthal. Rosenthal's daughter, Michaela, had a party while her parents were away in September of 2003. She called her friend Billy Senny, who was on Cape Cod. Senny drove to Wayland from Cape Cod, socialized with his friends, and drank until 4:30 in the morning, at which time he left the Rosenthal home and started to drive back to the Cape. At 6:00 a.m., State Trooper Ellen Engelhart was sitting in her cruiser in the breakdown lane of Route 24 in Wareham. Senny's car, traveling in excess of 90 miles per hour, plowed into it and pushed it 175 feet. Billy Senny was sentenced to 2.5 years in the Plymouth House of Correction, 5 years of probation, and 500 hours of community service. Senny's family issued a statement saying that he accepted responsibility for the accident and had decided to begin the healing process for all concerned by pleading guilty. This is a picture of State Trooper Ellen Engelhart before being struck by the car driven by Billy Senny. And this is a picture of her after the accident at the sentencing of Billy Senny. The crash fractured a cervical vertebrae, her larynx, and her jaw. She lost part of her skull and part of her brain. She remained in a catatonic state in which she could no longer walk or talk, eat, or communicate in any way. Ellen's daughter, Laura Tiedemann, acting as her mother's legal guardian, filed a $6.2 million civil suit in Plymouth County Superior Court. Now, Trooper Engelhart passed away last year in 2011, and now Billy Senny, after serving his time, faces the prospect of being hauled back into court to face manslaughter charges. This is 7 years after the event. Okay. This is a picture of Michael Berry at 16 years old. One of his classmates, Ashley St. Jean, would host Friday night parties in Haverhill. Kids would bring beer in their backpacks, and the beer would sometimes fall out of the backpacks and roll around the floor. In December of 2003, Ashley invited Michael Berry and other teens to one of these weekly parties. Ashley's friends carried cases of beer past Mrs. St. Jean as she sat in her living room. Michael drank until he was intoxicated and he became obnoxious. His friends asked him to leave the party, but on his way out he punched out a window and walked off. Berry's body was found shirtless and bloodied on the porch of one of their neighbors. So he had died of blood loss. Nancy St. Jean, the mother of the host of the party, was the first person to be imprisoned under the Massachusetts social host law. So remember, I said earlier, it was enough to host a party on property and allow other underage individuals to drink. You don't have to actually provide the alcohol. And that was the case with Nancy St. Jean. In 2004, the judge sentenced her to 6 months in state prison for allowing the party in her home that resulted in the death of 16-year-old Michael Berry. So just to drive home the point that not much has changed over time, In 1997, Megan Duggan, at age 17, a student at North Andover High School, she died in September 27, 1997, after a night of drinking when she fell down the stairs at her friend's house. Her friend's father, John Zaroa, had thought that Duggan had passed out from drinking and left her lying at the bottom of the basement stairs for more than 6 hours. Several partygoers told police investigators that Megan had drank a dozen beers and smoked marijuana. Megan lay at the bottom of the steps before the ambulance was called. The partygoers had assumed she was sleeping, put a blanket over her, and even started cleaning up around her before the real estate agent was supposed to show the house the next day. The party host, John Zarella, said that he just wanted the kids to have a safe place to drink. The assistant DA prosecuting his case said there's no safe place for kids that age to drink, and prosecuted him accordingly. And now, or a couple years ago, in North Andover, same town, Abigail Gargiola, age 17, Oliver Ames High School junior, was injured when she fell face first down a set of stairs at a Merrimack football college party. The Merrimack students were charged with providing alcohol to a minor, being minors in possession of alcohol, and keeping a noisy and disorderly house. One was also charged with 3 counts of possessing a false or stolen motor vehicle document after the police found 3 fake IDs in his wallet. So it's not just motor vehicle accidents, it's fights, right? Sexual misconduct. And even when no one is hurt, the risks are such that parents can pay the price for letting their kids drink. This is a photo of Elisa Kelly with her sons Brandon and Ryan. Elisa Kelly thought that she was doing the right thing when she bought $340 worth of beer and liquor for her 16-year-old son and more than 20 of his friends. In exchange for the booze, Kelly's son agreed that all his pals would sleep over at his birthday party. That, in the mind of the 42-year-old, was the best way to keep the underage kids from drinking and driving. And as she says in the video I'll show you, none of those kids were injured. But someone is paying the price. That's Elisa Kelly herself. She went to jail to serve a 27-month sentence for hosting the party. Police broke up the 2002 birthday party after someone reported underage drinking. When officers arrived, Kelly encouraged the partygoers to gargle with vinegar to mask the scent of alcohol, and she had also told parents that no alcohol would be served. So Elisa Kelly and her ex-husband were charged with 9 misdemeanor counts of contributing to the delinquency of a minor. The couple pled guilty, and the DA recommended a 90-day sentence. But the judge was angry about a prior death due to drinking and driving, underage drinking and driving, and decided to send a message and sentence them to 8 years. Okay? The couple appealed to the circuit court, which reduced the sentence to 27 months, and this case was in Virginia. The Virginia Supreme Court upheld that decision in 2007 and rejected claims of a illegal search of their property. The defense appealed the case to the Supreme Court, which denied to review the case. So Elisa Kelly said that she's also incurred legal fees of over $300,000.
It's a lot of time. It's very harsh sentence. It's very harsh. I never even had a parking ticket or anything. I was trying to save them, and I did. Nothing happened. But this, I just think, I shouldn't be the poster child for everything that, it's amazing to me that there's so many parties still going on. You see it in the paper, you see it everywhere, but nothing's happening. They're not getting prosecuted. Nothing's happening.
So it's hard to understand her, but essentially she was saying she didn't want to be the poster child for a community problem. It was common to the whole community. Be that as it may, don't expect leniency from the court as a matter of course. A criminal record, where does that follow you? Follows you onto the common application to college for students, graduate school, law school, medical school, professional associations, etc. So civil liability. This is where we get a lot of questions. Also, providing alcohol to a minor subjects you to civil liability. If you serve alcohol to an individual who is underage and they go out and hurt someone on the road or they hurt themselves, you could be subject to a lawsuit for damages from that incident. The theory that the plaintiffs would have to proceed on is negligence. The elements of negligence, duty of care, a breach of that duty of care, approximate cause, causation, and damages. So our firm recently had a SJC, Supreme Judicial Court case, in which a underage individual held a BYOB party, so her friends came, drank their own alcohol, and someone got in the car, drunk, crashed into a telephone pole, severely injuring his passenger. And the question for the court was, could the injured passenger's family proceed against the host of that party, who was herself underage and who hadn't provided any alcohol at that party? And if you remember to the criminal statute, it's enough simply to allow people to drink on your property to face charges under the statute. The court found that in this particular case, with an underage host who didn't provide any alcohol, there was no civil liability. So there's a split here between the criminal law and the civil law, something to take note of. Now, keep in mind that the host of that party could have been charged under the criminal law, and had she provided any alcohol to her guests herself, she could have faced both criminal and civil liability. And there's an open question on whether adults who host parties can face civil liability even when they don't provide alcohol to their guests. So the question becomes, you ask yourself, how are you going to budget for your party? Couple $100 for beer, snacks, whatever. How about $8 million for a civil judgment? We didn't take that case simply from thin air, that number simply from thin air. This was the amount that the jury found in the case of William White, who was convicted of vehicular homicide in the Zinnick and the Bornstein case. And that's a picture of Trista Zinnick and Neil Bornstein. And that's a breakdown of the judgment. Now, with the realities of the civil law under the joint and several liability doctrine, each defendant in a civil case is liable for the entire amount of the judgment. So here, the jury found that there were $8 million of damages caused by Billy White. Another cause of those damages was the liquor store that sold the alcohol that Billy drank. So both defendants were on the hook for the full amount. So you have to consider, if you host a party and a minor comes and drinks, gets on the road, injures someone, they're liable for that judgment, but you also may be liable for that same amount. And of course, the verdicts can go much higher. This is a Florida case in which a young man was rendered quadriplegic. The jury turned a verdict of $55 million. And that was partly because the school administrators actually attended the party. It was a private school that was sued. They knew about it. They knew the kids were drinking, and they did nothing. In the Sen case with the state trooper, Billy was driving a car that was registered to the family business. So that also brings up the prospect of having the family business pay the $6 million judgment. Other implications. Athletics. The MIAA, which is the governing body for high school athletics in Massachusetts, has established certain rules and regulations as to alcohol abuse. The minimum penalties are 25% loss of eligibility if a student is found to be drinking alcohol underage. Subsequent violations, you lose 60% of your season. And these are minimum guidelines. Some schools set the bar higher. In Maynard, this resulted in the loss of a Thanksgiving football game. So back to the Taylor Meyer case we spoke of in the beginning of this presentation. Taylor Meyer was a 17-year-old who drowned, and her friends said that they had learned their lesson, right? So returning to events immediately after her death, a couple weeks later, there was a party in Norfolk. 20 teenagers were arrested on alcohol-related charges 2 weeks after Taylor Meyer's death. And 6 of the students were from Norfolk. 1 was from Rentham. They had all attended the same high school. 5 weeks later, there was another drinking party busted. Same kids. And a majority of those arrested were wearing pink bracelets in remembrance of Taylor Meyer. And one of the cars, if I can get the photo, had this message for Taylor Meyer. Rest in peace, Tay. That's Taylor. Best friends always. And that individual was there drinking 5 weeks after Taylor's death. So there's obviously a breakdown here. Kathy Meyer, Taylor's mother, showed up at the kids' arraignment in court and demanded those bracelets back, just as a kind of dramatic moment to punch her point home. And the parties have continued in that community. So what's the disconnect here, right? This is a survey done of a Massachusetts town. 67%, I believe it was the same survey that we discussed earlier. 67% said that they'd used alcohol in their lifetime. 42% said that they'd used alcohol in the past 30 days. 25% said that they had engaged in binge drinking. And 25% said that they had been a passenger in a car while a driver had been drinking. And this is a graph of parents surveyed in the same town, in the same year, about their beliefs about their children's activities. So 89% believed that their child did not use alcohol or drugs regularly. 83% believed that their child had never used drugs. And 70% believed that their child had never used alcohol. Clearly, there's a disconnect. So what are the takeaways, right? So kids and parents just don't get it. They need to get together, have the difficult conversations. There's a bright line of the law. It's 21 years old. Any younger is illegal. Any older is legal. And allowing underage drinking on property under control is a crime that can carry serious consequences. So with that, I'll refer you to the website and back to principal. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions before we break for the evening? A lot to think about. Thank you for coming, and make sure that you were registered if you didn't check in on your way in. They'll be there on the way out to make sure that your attendance is recorded. Thank you.